I currently work in Japan Tobacco International, which is a big tobacco multinational. We are the third biggest one in the world. Started for the company in Belgium in 2003, and as from the beginning said that I was to the company that I was interested in an international experience, and then basically I was given the opportunity in 2008 to move for the first time, and then we basically moved with the whole family to Canary Islands, and then from there to Madrid, from Madrid to headquarters in Geneva, and now since the 1st of December in Cologne, Germany, as marketing director for Germany. In general, it is not necessary. It of course also depends on the company you work in. Within JTI, the common language that we use is English across the world, and then especially when you are on a more senior level, English is the common language, because often also the general managers or other people in the team are not from the country as such. Is it important to speak the local language? Well, it always helps, of course, and it's also strongly depending on the culture. If you are on the country, if you're living in Spain and you speak Spanish, it is much easier than if you don't speak Spanish. If you are sent as an expat to Amsterdam, there is no need to learn Dutch because everybody speaks English. So I would say it is not. You can find your way around in English. And of course, within the work life, English is perfectly fine. But of course, knowing a local language is always an additional asset, I would say. And then, depending on the country, it's more necessary or less necessary. Work-life balance is very important because no matter how much you like your professional life, there's also such a thing as private life. Especially when I have a family, you have to make sure that that they are happy and that you spend enough time with them. I would say so far in general, in all the countries I have lived, there was no issue with work-life balance. I think the culture within JTI is not different than any other big multinationals. We do a lot of hours, and in the private sector it is like that. But it's also fair to say that normally I never have to do anything in weekends, and for me that's fine. I don't mind doing long days and long hours in the week, as long as my weekends and my holidays are sacred. That's fine with me. In the countries I have been, there is no big difference in work-life culture. The Spanish tend to stay longer at work, but they also tend to start later, so it's just the same number of hours. But if you would go to the UK, they have a tendency to start at 8 or 7:30, but at 5:30 everybody's leaving the office. Yeah. But of course there are countries I could imagine where work balance is different than what we are used to in European culture. Of course, every company has its own business culture, and of course the way we do, I would say from a management point of view, we drive the business and how the culture is not very different, but of course every country has its local culture, so and there you have to adapt a little bit to. It's fair enough to say that the countries I have been in, there is no massive cultural difference. Of course, the Spanish are not exactly the same as the Swiss, but if you go to Asia, for example, there is a completely different cultural difference and way of working difference to the European way of doing business. And I can imagine if you go to the more Islamic Muslim world, Middle East, there is still another way of doing business. But in general, I would say I have not experienced massive or major differences in between culture. I would say there is still a link with the home office here, although we don't have very frequent contacts. I am not on their payroll. It remains from a legal and contract point of view my home base. But I don't have very frequent contact. I have some contacts with colleagues that were also like friends, and we have maybe some contacts over Facebook, and sometimes it happens that we have meetings together when we have international meetings. Not so much anymore now, because I am part of Central Europe region, but when I was Western Europe region, of course, I had my Belgian colleagues in the Indian national meetings, but in general the contact is pretty limited, I would say. Very honest, I don't have the impression that I experienced a big culture shock, which is probably due to the fact that I have been traveling or moving around within Europe. I would say the biggest difference in terms of culture and a completely different angle of the part of the business is when I moved from Spain to the headquarters in Geneva, because the function as such was completely different. So in the countries I've always been marketing director for a local organization. When I was in HQ, I was responsible on a global level for a specific brand. So the function as such was completely different, and of course the dynamics in a headquarter are completely different from the dynamics in the local market organization. So it was not so much, I would say, a shock because of different culture. It was just more a shock of different job and the difference between how an HQ is managed and a market is managed.
Yeah.
So two completely different aspects within a complete business chain of a big multinational organization. I would not say there are so many differences. I would say that the Spanish are a little bit warmer and definitely more open than the Swiss, which are a little bit more reserved. I think if you really want to have big difference, you have to go back again to this big, Asian way of doing things versus European versus United States way of doing business. So no, I haven't seen massive massive differences. I think what is though something that is probably not always easy for the local people is that if you get every 2, 3, 4 years a new boss that on top is not a local one, it's also for them, it's always easier if you can do business in your own language than you have to adjust to the language of your boss. So although most of the people in the organization speak English very well, it is not the same thing than talking in Flemish or in French or in Spanish. So. And they never know what they're gonna get, so they always have this a little bit. If somebody from the local organization has made a career and was promoted to director or general manager, they know who this person is with his advantages and disadvantages. They get all of a sudden called into a meeting room and they say, look, your new boss is Siegfried, and he's from Belgium and he's been around there and there and there, and it's a big unknown, of course. So it requires also some flexibility from their part. Yes, I would definitely do it again because I think it's a very enriching experience. I like to work with different people from different countries. I find it very interesting to always see again that markets are different, that legislation is different, that the way of doing business is slightly different. So also, sometimes I've been in markets where we were market leader. I've been in markets where I'm now, where we are only the fourth player of the four big tobacco multinationals. So what I like about it is the variation in the job. I am not the kind of person that functions very well if he has to do 10 years the same thing. So moving around countries for the company I work for, moving around countries for the company I work for, I find it very interesting. Never forget about the family. Make sure you manage the family. I think it's regardless of the fact that the company treats you very well and they make sure that everything is well organized, which is already a very big luxury. Expat life is more easier for the person that is moving for his job and for the company than for the family members, because they are coming into a new environment. They have to go to other schools. Wives leave their job. It's not easy to find a new job to fill in your daily life. So I see clear advantages, but you also have to see the reality of life, that there is also disadvantages, and I think it's important to manage them well, because otherwise it inevitably leads to or family going back or everybody coming back. So, which is per definition not wrong. If it could also be that everybody is not really happy into the expat life. So, but it's something that tends to be forgotten, but which is very important.